Hello and welcome to the local campaign. I'm Cynthia Mulligan, political specialist for City News. On October 19th, Canada will elect the 42nd Parliament, and Rogers TV is the only station producing debates of all of Toronto's 25 ridings. For the next hour, you will hear from the candidates of Scarborough North. Now, 2015 marks the beginning of electoral riding redistribution, so boundaries in the majority of ridings have changed, along with some of the riding names. So before I introduce the candidates to you, let's take a closer look now at the newly redrawn riding of Scarborough North.
Scarborough North is a new riding that was created by the 2012 federal electoral boundaries redistribution. It encompasses portions of what were once in the ridings of Scarborough Rouge River and Scarborough Agincourt. The riding's northern edge is Steeles Avenue East, which is also the Toronto-York region border. The southern limit is Highway 401. Midland Avenue defines the western edge. On the east lies a portion of the Rouge River, Morningside Avenue, and Nielsen Road. Neighborhoods include Alton Towers, Morningside Heights, Rosewood, Richmond Park, and a portion of Malvern. Recognizable landmarks: the Chinese Cultural Center on Shepherd Avenue East, the Islamic Foundation Center on Nugget Avenue, just west of Markham Road, and at the eastern edge of the riding is the Malvern Town Centre.
And now I will give each candidate 1 minute to make their opening statement. This will be done in the order of most seats by the party in the House of Commons. And we will begin with, Ravinder Mali, the Conservative candidate, did not join us this evening, so we are going to start with Rathika Sitsabaiesan.
Thank you, Cynthia. My name is Rathika Sitsabaiesan, and I've had the honor of serving as your NDP Member of Parliament over the last 4 years, and I'm running for re-election to stay as your new Democrat MP here in Scarborough North. I'm running in this election because I care deeply about our community and our country. I know what it's like to struggle, to make it into the middle class, to be unemployed, to be underemployed, to juggle work and student loans. I also know what it's like to fight for Scarborough. I live in this neighborhood, and I've worked for the last 4 years to bring a greater voice for our community. The NDP is the only party that is truly fighting for everyone in our communities. Tom Mulcair has the experience to make difficult decisions. We know where he stands, and the NDP has a concrete plan to help Canadian families. This election is about change. Change is having the courage of your convictions, of knowing where you want to take this country and having a plan to get it there. Our plan is balanced, responsible, and progressive, and I look forward to talking more about this plan tonight.
Rathika, thank you. Next, we have Shaun Chen representing the Liberal Party. Shaun.
Thank you, Cynthia. Good evening. It's such a pleasure to be here. My name is Shaun Chen, and I'm here tonight as your Liberal candidate for the riding of Scarborough North. I've had the incredible privilege of growing up in Scarborough. I've lived here, I've played here, I've gone to school here, and I'm a proud graduate of our Scarborough public school system. For the past 9 years, I've had the privilege of serving as the Toronto District School Board trustee for the area, and over the past year as chair of the TDSB. I love our community, and I know how important it is for us to make change. Each and every day I work with families, children, and speak to parents, and I know that it's becoming more and more difficult for families to make ends meet. Household incomes have stalled, the cost of living is rising, and Canada is the only country now in a recession. We've got to do better, we've got to support our families and our next generation, and that is why I'm so proud to stand as a Liberal candidate, because we're the only party with a plan that will bring change for Canadians, and I look forward to speaking tonight more about our priorities.
Thank you, Shaun. Next, we have Eleni Macdonald, who is representing the Green Party tonight.
I am. Thank you, Cynthia. So I'm running in this election because, like many young people, I want to make a difference. It's disappointing to hear from youth that they can't find jobs after spending thousands of dollars on education. And in addition to that, I'm quite concerned about challenges facing our aging population, both today and in the future. I see many shortfalls with the current government and our political system as a whole. Today, in this election, people are voting against something, not for something. To me, this constitutes a failure of our democracy. The Green Party represents and promotes true democratic values, which we must strive for. In our current system, votes are whipped. Members of Parliament must vote in line with their party. And if they don't, they face likely expulsion from the caucus. The Green Party refuses to engage in such behavior, and we believe that community interests are paramount. I look forward to highlighting other aspects of the Green Party platform in this debate and hope to provide voters with a true understanding of what Canada is capable of.
Thank you very much. And next we have Raphael Rosch, who is running as an independent. Raphael.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you for having me. My name is Raphael Rosch, and I'm running as an independent because I got fed up, like many of us voters, of the fact that party politics is reigning the way that Canada is being ruled, and there's just no representation for our voices. And I can either complain about it or I can do something about it, and I decided that I'm willing to risk my name and my reputation to stand up for the little guy, because I am the little guy, and I represent the voice of the little guy, no pun intended, because I'm the only pro-life candidate in this riding, as far as I know, and I've met these candidates next to me, and they're just wonderful people, and I think it's a great shame because they won't be able to vote their values. They have to vote according to party lines, and I think I personally have had just about enough of that, and I think people should vote for according to their values and for politicians who will represent their values and not some party values. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And also running but not present with us this evening is Asiya Khatun, and here is her pre-recorded statement.
Dear Scarborough Northian, I am Asiya Khatun and I'm running as an independent candidate for Scarborough North. I'm a political activist, a proud community volunteer, a mother, youth trainer, and a registered practicing dental hygienist. And God willing, I'm going to be your next Member of Parliament from Scarborough North. With you, I stand for, number one, reversal of the new sex education curriculum. They want you to believe that it is just a provincial matter. Believe me, it is not. Let's just stop taking this from them. They believe that whoever is against the sex education curriculum is ignorant. Some very prominent members of our Scarborough North community believe that the parents, the people, and the grandparents are uneducated and they need to be educated on this subject. I tell them it is them who are uneducated. I will be your voice, not only at Ottawa, but I will talk to all levels of government on this. Number two, the religious institution in our communities like churches, temples, mosques, and gurdwaras does most of the community work. I believe they should get most funding to keep increasing and working in their community. And for that, I'm going to secure additional fundings for them. Number three, again, this year, our Scarborough North youth had been under tremendous pressure of students' loan. I promise I will fight for you at the Parliament Hill to get relaxation not only on repayments but to write off these loans. If they cannot get you the jobs, then they will surely not charge you for that. In my allotted time, I can only discuss or talk to you about these three important issues. If you want more information, please look up Asiya Khatun on Facebook. Thank you.
And we are going to begin now with our question and answer period of the debate. Each candidate will be given 30 seconds to respond, followed by discussion. Now, the first question is about the deficits. And one of the things that Justin Trudeau has done with the Liberal Party to set himself apart is he has said he would run 3 consecutive deficits in order to invest in infrastructure. Shaun, you were a TDSB trustee. You know what deficits look like. In one point, the TDSB had a $109 million deficit, which had to be cut to balance. So do you believe in running deficits? You've seen how hard it is to balance a budget with a deficit.
Absolutely. When it comes to the school board, we're mandated by provincial legislation to balance a budget. We essentially have no choice.
Right.
And without any revenue tools as a board, we end up having to cut things like classroom computers, textbooks, educational assistants.
Do you think Trudeau is right to run 3 consecutive deficits?
Absolutely. The NDP and the Conservatives have both said they're going to balance the budget within 6 months. That's the wrong approach. We're currently the only G7 country in recession. We need to, as a government, demonstrate leadership to invest in the economy, spur growth, create jobs, because the people need the help right now. And that's our plan.
And how will you balance the books, though, after?
The
after
books,
3 years?
we will run 3 modest deficits for 3 years, and then we will balance the books in 2019. How we will do it is to make sure that we cut down on things that need to be made more efficient. For example, what we plan to do is we plan to raise taxes for the wealthiest 1%. Because, quite frankly, if you're a big CEO making $5 million a year, you can afford to give a little bit more. Right now, we know that the middle class is disappearing, and research report after research report points to the top wealthiest 1% accumulating wealth like never before. Meanwhile, everyone else is becoming less and less rich. What we need to do is help the people rebuild the middle class, and the way you do it is by cutting taxes for the middle class. So those earners between $45,000 and $89,000 a year, we will reduce their income tax rate from 22% to 20.5%. That will save more money for families so that they have more disposable income to buy the things that they need.
Rathika, I'm going to let you respond. Your party has a different philosophy.
Definitely. Definitely. The NDP's plan is to actually run a balanced budget. Our plan is responsible, progressive, and balanced. The Liberals are saying that they're going to run 3 years of deficits and then all of a sudden the fourth year have a surplus of $1 billion, and it just doesn't make sense. Looking at their fiscal plan, it's obvious that there is a $6.5 billion hole. They're telling us that they're going to cut services of $6.5 billion, and Mr. Trudeau's economic advisor, senior economic advisor, Mr. McCallum, who's the MP just north of me in Markham, he said that with respect to cuts, nothing is off the table, and that means Canadians are left just wondering, what will these cuts be? Would it be our hospitals? Would it be our doctors? Would it be our infrastructure? We don't know what the Liberals are going to cut. And I'm just scared, to be honest. I'm nervous that the Liberals are saying they're going to have deficits at the same time as Mike Harris-style cuts. And we can't afford that. Canada can't afford that. Ontarians cannot afford that. And Scarborough cannot afford that. The NDP plan is to actually, our budget is fully costed, it's independently vetted by 4 economists, and we've used both the Finance Department numbers as well as the Parliamentary Budget Office's numbers, and both times our budget comes out as balanced, and it's a difference in priorities, really. The Liberals refuse to ask the most profitable, wealthiest corporations, large corporations, to pay their fair share. And the NDP says these corporations need to pay their fair share, and so we're going to increase corporate income taxes from 15% to 17%, and that 2% increase is going to make sure that that 17% corporate income tax rate is still below Mr. Harper's average in his tenure as Prime Minister. It's below the US's corporate income tax rate. It's below the G7 nations, and so we're still going to stay competitive. And we're able to run a balanced budget while investing in priorities
it's
that
interesting.
We need for Canada.
Many people are saying that the NDP and the Liberals have actually switched places here, and that the Liberals are becoming more progressive than the NDP when it comes to running a deficit. People would have thought it would be the NDP running the deficit and not the Liberals.
It's because the NDP is responsible. We're responsible while being progressive.
Shaun, I'll let you answer too.
We're not going to just run deficits and cuts. We're not going to cut services. We're going to make sure that we maintain the level of service in our country.
Shaun, and then I'll get Eleni and Raphael.
First of all, I just want to clarify, I'm not sure what cuts the candidate next to me is referring to, because quite frankly, what we're saying is that we're going to invest in Canadians.
It's the cuts that are on page 8 of your fiscal plan.
In terms of the I'm sorry, I'm not finished speaking. In terms of the economists that the candidate refers to, I'll tell you, there's a professor and a renowned economist by the name of Jack Mintz, and he's done an analysis and said that the corporate tax cut that the NDP are proposing will end up in 150,000 lost jobs, because when you increase corporate taxes, guess what? You're driving businesses away. They will go elsewhere where they can produce for cheaper and have cheaper labor. What we should be doing in a time of economic turmoil is attracting investment, making sure that people are investing in Canada so that we can have job creation. Now, in 3 years after running those deficits, guess what? When you invest in your economy, when you build infrastructure, the guy helping to pave that road will have a job. He will have money for his family. He might go and then buy that extra coffee in the morning or go replace that lawnmower. And guess what? The person working at Tim Hortons has a job, the manufacturer of the lawnmower has a job, and that helps create growth and everybody prospers. The NDP plan is to cut, and guess what? That will only further our deficit, that will only further our recession, and it will create a situation where you don't have growth. We don't want things to get worse.
Eleni.
So I think actually in answering your question, it seems as though they've kind of switched positions. But I mean, from what we've heard and in terms of the political landscape, the NDPs are known across the country as being poor economic managers. So to me, this just seems a political game of, let's not run any deficits. Let's just try and impress the other people on the other side of the table so we can pull more of those votes. I mean, in terms of running a deficit, the way individuals run their economic management, everybody has a little bit of debt. There's nothing wrong with that. Having a little bit of credit card debt actually can fulfill a little bit more of your desires and things that you actually need, as long as you pay it back and are responsible. That is okay. And I mean, on the concept of the impact of decreasing corporate taxes, I mean, maybe these corporations will create more jobs, but are those really the jobs that we want? Because in my opinion, we have large corporations that are being owned by multinational conglomerates across the world that are slashing jobs all across North America and harming individual people. And the people who work at Tim Hortons, do they want to work there? Do they want to be working in a minimum wage job day in and day out, terrible hours? I don't think they do. They're doing it to support themselves. So while we may be, increasing the economy in little bits and pieces, it's all about the value of these jobs.
Raphael.
So I guess I'm a little bit of a radical in many ways. I don't think the government should be in debt. So, I mean, there's good types of debt and there's bad types of debt. When you're running a household, we understand that, mortgage. But that's because we're not the government and we don't have people to tax when we want to pay our mortgage. So it just has to work out that way. But the government can always increase taxes. Why run a deficit at all? But even that's not my concern. It's the fact that when we see the approaches to how do we eliminate unemployment or all these things that have been brought up, I think, and I looked it up before I came, there's 320,000 millionaires in Canada. Now, millionaires don't become millionaires simply through inheritance. Most of these people worked hard and they employ other people. Now, think of it this way. You have a millionaire who makes $3 million a year from his small to medium business that he owns. And you raise taxes on this millionaire 1%. That's $30,000. A lot of people who are working for minimum wage, that could be someone who is employed by this millionaire that we so find as enemies to our cause. And so just in doing that, we can hire per millionaire one more person working at 30% raise over the minimum wage in all provinces.
So let me ask each of you, let's take this discussion and make it hyper-local into the riding that you all want to represent. How would this trickle down to your riding, to the average person there? Rathika, I'll start with you.
Sure. If I may, I just have to also let Ms. Macdonald know that the NDP is actually great fiscal managers, and in provincial governments across this country, we've run successive balanced budgets. And I must say, Tommy Douglas, the founder of the NDP, ran 17 consecutive balanced budgets before he introduced Medicare in Saskatchewan, which then became national afterward as our universal health care. So maybe she wants to check her facts. Looking at Scarborough North, the community thrives by small and medium-sized businesses. North Scarborough used to have a thriving manufacturing sector, but because our governments, liberal and conservative before, have not invested in innovation that would stimulate the manufacturing growth, we've seen manufacturing dwindle and disappear in North Scarborough. And a lot of the business operations are small and medium-sized enterprises. The NDP is committed to decrease the tax for small and medium-sized enterprises. The small business tax rate is at 11% right now. We're saying drop it down to 9% so that these people who are actually creating 80% of the jobs in the private sector in this country are going to be given a break, rather than the large profitable corporations who the Liberals and the Conservatives give their billions of dollars of tax breaks to every year. They take that money and then close up shop and leave the country. I'm saying give the tax break to the small and medium-sized businesses who are the job creators, who are the economic engines in our local communities, and that's how it's going to really affect the residents of North Scarborough. So we're going to see more jobs created locally in our community.
Shaun?
Well, what we're advocating for is to have a federal government that is a partner with cities. And part of that infrastructure that we talked about is $60 billion over 10 years in additional funding that will go towards funding new public transit projects, seniors' homes, community centers, childcare spaces, and also green infrastructure. So what we want to do is inject that money so that the economy can grow, so that projects like the Scarborough subway can finally be built. That project has been talked about and talked about and talked about, but without a federal partner that is putting enough money on the table to support public transit, it has really just gone around in a circular conversation. And I'm going to be a strong champion for that. At the same time, we have to invest in green technologies. Right next to us is the Rouge Park. We as a generation need to make sure that we keep the health of the planet. And so investing in water and wastewater facilities, in clean energy, $20 billion will go towards green infrastructure, and that will help create jobs, including local jobs, particularly for our young people. We're hoping to achieve 5,000 green jobs through that $20 billion in infrastructure funding that will also be tied in to making sure that the economy is growing. So it's a good thing when we invest.
Let's talk about transit, if we can switch to that vein for a moment, seeing as the door was opened up there. The Conservatives, who are not represented here this evening, in their last budget outlined a plan to have a transit fund, the first national one, they were calling it. Many have said it falls far short, but it is the first step for a national plan. How do the NDP and Liberals differ? But I would like you two to start on what you think, we'll start with you, Raphael, is the most important thing when it comes to transit, particularly in Scarborough North.
I remember when I was living still at York University, and I was doing my internship at IBM, and it was a 16-month internship, loved it. But I because of where IBM's location was, I had to ride the Viva. And Viva at the time was pretty new, and I got to talking to the bus drivers there, and I was shocked to hear that Viva was operating at a profit. And it was a shock because I was always listening to the news saying TTC is running deficits, they can't afford it, and I said, how can the TTC, which is subsidized by the government, how can they not manage to manage their company in such a way that they can even break even, just break even? And they couldn't do it, and the reason for that is because the way that Viva was structured as a private entity was that they knew that they had to do things more efficiently. They couldn't just pay off their friends and give money to people that was coming from taxpayers, and it's just what's happening at the TTC. I mean, not everywhere within the TTC, but there's just a lot of bloat, which means that there's a lot of funding that is being lost and wasted in things that it shouldn't be. So I'm not talking about cuts, but just let's reduce the bloat. Let's reduce the bloat, get better services. The TTC has just recently we heard that ridership is at, people are so satisfied with their ridership on the TTC as never before, and so quality is going up, but why are the prices so exorbitant on the TTC? And I remember
many would argue it's lack of federal funding. So let's focus on that. Elena, where do you stand on federal funding for transportation?
Well, I think in supporting these infrastructure projects in municipalities is extremely crucial. Pardon me. And going off of Raphael's point, I personally ride both the subway, the buses, and the RT, because if you're going to get anywhere in Scarborough, you have to. And I think the biggest issue is that it's not reliable. I can't even count how many times I have my headphones on and I have to take it off to hear only mumbled voices telling me that something's stuck at the next stop. I never really know what's going on, but even half the time you want to get to Scarborough and the RT's shut down or it's on maintenance because it is so old and dilapidated. So I think in terms of providing support for residents of Scarborough subway isn't necessarily the way to go because it's such a long-term infrastructure project that isn't going to support increased ridership over the next 10 years, which is actually how long it's going to take, and especially once they actually decide on one of 10 pathways that are being discussed. So I think I agree with the component of bloat, but I just think overall efficiency is really lacking in a lot of in all the government levels. And I think that's why the Green Party wants to make sure that we support not only infrastructure development through municipalities in connection with our Council of Canadian Governments, in which we would work together with municipalities and provinces, but also support green infrastructure. I mean, if you look at Europe, some of the things they're doing are mind-blowing. I don't understand why they can't be done here.
Okay. Shaun, the Conservatives are offering $1 billion a year for transit infrastructure by 2019. How does the Liberal Party differ from that? How would you improve upon that? And then I'll give you the chance to answer that question as well.
Yeah. For us, we're committing as part of our $60 billion package for infrastructure, $20 billion that will be focused on transit. And we're not going to go and dictate to Edmonton or to Toronto what that transit project should look like. At the end of the day, we want to provide flexible funding that enables municipalities to work together with constituents, with residents, to determine what is the best transit project. Now, for me, I know in Northeast Scarborough, it takes an hour and a half for people to get downtown. As Elena just mentioned, oftentimes it's getting on the bus, on the RT, on the subway, and that's not acceptable. And guess what? Driving isn't that much better, because the gridlock on the Don Valley, the gridlock on the Gardiner is exactly the same issue. What we do need to do is invest, and that's why that $20 billion will flow through to support projects in transit. Renewal of transit, new transit. And one of the projects that's been sitting there is the Scarborough subway. It hasn't been built.
Do you support it?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. All right. Rathika.
Thank you. We face it every day, the inadequate transit, crumbling roads, our bridges, infrastructure crumbling every day. And we need to see reliable, stable, long-term funding. And that's what, speaking with municipalities, mayors from across Ontario, mayors are saying that they want an equal partner in the federal government. Municipalities own 60% of the public infrastructure, but they only get 8% of the tax money that's collected. And they want reliable funding, and the NDP is committed to our Better Transit Plan, which is a concrete plan that would invest over $1.3 billion annually for over the next 20 years. And after the end of the first mandate, by the end of the first mandate, an additional $1.5 billion for transit specifically. So that would more than double the existing transfer to municipalities to about $5 billion annually. This plan would create 54,000 jobs in construction and manufacturing and transit operations across Canada. And unlike the Liberals' plan, which seems to be a short-term investment, because what they're doing is they're investing in transit for 2 years, and then you see cuts to the transit funding, and that's not what municipalities are asking for. Municipalities are asking for sustainable funding that's going to be reliable, and that it's going to allow them the power, give the local communities the power to make the decision of what their transit priorities are going to be, and that's what the NDP's plan does.
For the record, I just want to be clear. There are no cuts. I don't know where Ms. Sitsabaiesan is getting her information, but at the end of the day, we are providing long-term sustainable funding. It's $20 billion spread out over the next 10 years, and most of that funding will flow through over the first 4 years so that transit projects can begin and can get the shovel in the ground and start building.
As opposed to the Conservative plan, which slowly ramps up to 2019.
Exactly, because that doesn't put the investment where you need it first, which is to put money into capital at the beginning.
The cuts that I mentioned from the Liberal fiscal plan actually state that in 2016-17 and 2017-18, it's $1.6 billion that they're allocating, and then in 2018-19, it drops. That's what it says, to 1.1. That's what it says in their fiscal plan. So that's where I got my numbers from. And the Liberal plan also is reliant on P3s. And with Mr. Harper and the Conservatives, their funding is it's complicated. It comes with complicated application process, restrictive rules, and long delays in actually getting the money to the municipalities because they're through the P3s. And any mayor will tell you that how frustrated they are. Ontario has only received 11% of the P3 Canada funds that they were allocated. The Liberal plan is relying on P3s, and we know that the P3s are inefficient, they cause delays, and the funds that are allocated don't get out the door, and the municipalities don't receive them in time to actually invest it in the infrastructure projects that they would like to see them invested in.
Let's switch this conversation to immigration. One thing that is so unique and fascinating about this riding, Scarborough North, is that immigrants make up 68.4% of the population, which is the highest rate in Canada. Fascinating. Tell me how that impacts this community and what you would do with immigration. The current government has focused on bringing skilled migrants into this country. Would you change that? Do you agree with that? I'll start with you first, Raphael.
Well, I can't speak for the other candidates, but I myself am an immigrant. And actually, one of the first things I did as an immigrant was to run for office, to celebrate. It was literally, I was a month into my citizenship when an election came up. So I think immigrants who come here come usually fleeing bad conditions or seeking a better condition in their situation. And one of the things that you get from walking around Scarborough North, where my in-laws, who are also immigrants, and their friends and all the extended family, they all live there. So I can see how certain issues at government level affect them directly, and therefore indirectly affect me as part of their family. And one of the interesting things that you notice when you walk around the riding is how many people simply cannot speak English at a working level. And for me, it touches me personally because you can't communicate with them. You can't share what your values are with them. You can't hear what they're going through in their life. And so I would personally invest government funds, federal funds, into job training, skills training, but also language training for people so that they can better communicate. A lot of the complaints that you hear as well is doctors coming from Asia can't practice in Canada. What's that all about? I mean, do Asian people have a different biology? I don't think so. And why is that the case? I'm sure there's valid reasoning behind it, but let's deal with that valid reasoning and let's get these doctors, these professionals, their accreditation or their equivalents in Canada as soon as possible so we can have these skilled workers that are already in the country, already have their citizenship, and are just waiting for the chance to be able to practice their career that they studied so many decades for in many cases. So that would be my first approach at it.
All right, Eleni.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, actually, it's interesting. It seems like he's got a bit of the Green Party platform that he's spewing a bit, because that's something that we support as well, is a targeted approach so that we can have skills accreditation supported with the jobs that are actually here. So a more targeted approach of these are the jobs that we need to be filled because our labor force can't supply that. So you know what, let's look elsewhere because people want to contribute to this country. They want to make an honest living and support themselves and their families. I mean, living in the community, I'm well aware of how multicultural it is, but something I find that it's a little concerning for me is I see the culture is almost a little divided amongst themselves. They tend to congregate within their own culture, which is understandable because they come from their own communities where they relate to these people. But I think the way that we build a stronger and more multicultural Canada is to have them integrate and to have them share their experiences with each other and their what they've learned. I mean, the best part of these debates is having all these different opinions together because that's when you get to the most appropriate and adequate solution, is having different opinions that actually contribute to a much more productive solution.
Rathika, where does your party stand on bringing in skilled immigrants to this country? Does it need to change? Do we keep the status quo?
We welcome skilled immigrants, and it seems I'm also a migrant. I'm a child of war, came to Canada when I was 5, and with respect to our immigration policy, I want to share a story of one of the thousands of constituents I've helped, and most of the casework out of my office has been immigration related because of the high number of immigrants, like you mentioned. It's a story of a young woman wanting to sponsor her mother to reunite the family to meet her newborn child. They were stuck in the system for 12 years. 12 years, and the last 3 years of it, my office was helping as the Member of Parliament's office, and we tried to push for this mother to be reunited with her daughter and granddaughter, and sadly, she passed away before she was actually processed because she was stuck in the backlog that was created by the Liberal government before and then perpetuated by the Conservatives. And it was a grandmother trying to meet her granddaughter, and that child never got to experience
So how would you
the
change
granddaughter.
this?
That's the first thing is to create an immigration ombudsman's office, because we have so many complaints. My office and every members of parliament across the country, if you speak to them about immigration, they will tell you about the struggles that people are facing and the struggles that MPs face in advocating for the constituents. And creating an immigration ombudsman's office would directly deal with complaints with the immigration system. And the NDP's policy centers around reuniting family, the importance of parents and children being able to be together. And with respect to immigrants and skilled migrants and how we have so many here, we saw cuts of $30 million of funding from the Foreign Credential Recognition Program. The NDP is committed to restoring the $30 million that was cut from the Foreign Credential Recognition Program. So we don't have the situation that Raphael mentioned, where we have a doctor, a qualified doctor who was practicing in another country, come here, and the story we all know is that they're driving a taxi cab or doing some other job where they're not able to practice, while in Canada we have a shortage of family practitioners. We have a shortage of doctors, and we have qualified doctors who are not able to practice.
Okay, Shaun, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, first of all, I have to say that with respect to immigration, we as the Liberal Party are very clear in that we are going to, first of all, repeal the parts of Bill C-24 that create two-tier citizenship. Because no matter if you are born in Canada or you are born in another country, a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian, and Mr. Trudeau has said that. With respect to family reunification, that is actually the centerpiece of our immigration policy. Under our plan, what we hope to accomplish is to double the number of applicants for parents and grandparents to 10,000 each year. That will double it from the current level of 5,000. And I can tell you from my own experience how important it was for me to have my grandparents help raise me when I was a child. And in many families and in many cultures and traditions, grandparents are a part of the family, and it helps create that next generation of family together. And with respect to an ombudsman, I just heard Rathika say that her office has helped so many people who need help with immigration, yet at the same time saying 2 seconds later that they couldn't be helped and we need an immigration ombudsman to help. I will say this, as your MP, I will be there to support and to fight for every application, and that is my commitment to the people.
I must jump in here. An MP's office, there's only so much that you can do. When a visa office in another country refuses to look at applications and an MP's office intervenes on behalf of the applicant, they respond or they choose to not respond for a long periods of time. And members of Parliament...
How would an ombudsman have more power than an MP?
Because what ombudsmen do is they look for consistent similarities in problems. Mm-hmm. If my office and MP's office in British Columbia and in Quebec and Newfoundland are all experiencing the same problems with the visa office in, let's pick one that I've had a lot of trouble with, let's say in the Chandigarh office or the New Delhi office or Islamabad office, it doesn't matter which one. If it's consistently one visa office that all MPs are having a problem with, mm-hmm. then if the minister won't do anything about it because they're partisan and they're going to say, oh, my government's doing everything that's great and wonderful, then an ombudsperson would be unbiased, nonpartisan, and actually be able to get to the bottom of what is going on at that foreign visa office, which is a satellite Canadian office. If the minister's unwilling to act, and even with an MP intervening, if they're still not willing to do anything, an ombudsperson can and do that investigation.
I'm so sorry to interject.
Please do.
The last thing I ever wanted to do was ever bring up anything that was against any one individual person, but just this comment about these ombudsmen. I mean, everything that Rathika is saying she's done, she is a wonderful woman. I actually volunteered for her campaign in 2011 and in the last couple of years. And what's so fascinating to me is she helps all these immigrants, but she doesn't remember me. We met, I sat in her car, in the front seat of her car, and we drove around together. I actually wrote the background paper on the ombudsman bill that she was going to introduce, and I sent it to her constituency, her parliamentary assistant, Ashley Singh. So these are just little things to me that it seems it's so, this bantering back and forth between the Liberal this and the NDP that. I mean, when does it end? When do we just take individual people and remember them? I think I would never get to be so big for my britches that I would forget someone who helped me in that respect. And it's just, the last thing I ever wanted to do was point light at that, but it's just continuous of these little things that I've actually done. It went completely unnoticed, and that's not the reason I did it by any means, because I did at the time really support the NDP and what they were doing. But I mean, just to hear these little pieces of how much support she's given for the community, I mean, where's the other side of it? Do you support the other people who support you? Only the ones who stick around long enough, I assume.
Okay,
Wow.
we'll change the topic. Let's get into the median income in this riding is $20,482. That is the lowest in the province. So that must bring certain issues to this community, to the neighborhoods in Scarborough North. Do you feel there is a need in particular for a national housing strategy to bring aid to people who are making below the rest of the people in the province? Shaun, I'll start with you.
That's actually very key to our platform, Cynthia. We are strong advocates for a national housing strategy. And what we want to do is work with cities. We've got people like Adam Vaughan, who has been at the City of Toronto, who knows the issues there. And part of our infrastructure plan is to include money that is dedicated for social infrastructure. And that includes affordable housing. So what we plan
Give me
to
some
do...
specifics on dollars and cents here.
So it's $20 billion over the next 10 years for social infrastructure. Affordable housing and seniors facilities are a key component of the social infrastructure package. And what we want to do is to work to make sure that co-ops are renewed, to refurbish affordable housing units, to build new units. And we all know through the Toronto Housing Corporation that there's a lot of challenges. People are living in conditions that are simply not safe. And as someone who has worked with young people and families, I see the struggles when families just simply are not living in a safe environment and not being able to put food on the table. And that's why our plan is very focused on investment in the right areas, and to have a federal partner that will sit down and work with the other levels of government. It's sad to say, but the current government refuses to meet with the premiers. Our strategy is very different. We will work with the provinces, we will work with the municipalities, and we will make sure that we work together to solve these issues.
Raphael.
For the viewers, I don't know if you've noticed, but the three most common words in this debate have been funding, cuts, and investment. And for me, it's just, they're buzzwords. They don't mean anything, because there's a difference between efficiency and effectiveness, right? You can throw $1 billion into a problem and not solve it, and then just give it to the right person and they'll solve it for less than $10,000. So when the big parties talk about funding and taxes and investment, for me personally, it means very little, very little. And one of the things that even yesterday we were at a meeting with the candidates, and a lot of the young people that showed up, they said, you know what, it's crazy. I went to university and I can't get a job in my field. And I say, wow, that's such a common thing to hear. And it's interesting. I was born in Switzerland, and I lived there from the age of 18 for a year and a half. And it's such a different lifestyle, such a different system. They have a lot of socialized services, but the reason why it's not working in Canada is because socialism does not work with a strong central government. In Switzerland, people, the electors, people themselves make the decisions. The politicians are just there to kind of organize things, but every time they want to change the color on the buses, they put it up for a referendum. You want green cars? Okay, let's make them all green, but you need 100,000 signatures. When people get involved, they become responsible, and the decisions made are well thought out, more informed, because the people who want it to go through, they focus on informing people, not in getting the money. And here's the other thing. The other difference in culture between, at least in respect to the question, in Switzerland, there isn't such a high regard for university education as there is in Canada. Over here, it's you got to go to university so you can get a good job. In Switzerland is, okay, does your career require university training, or can you just get an apprenticeship?
Okay,
right
I
out
think
of
we're
high
veering
school?
off track here
So,
on education.
But that's what I mean. It's
Okay.
like we can throw funds at public education, and that's not going to result in better jobs. Look at all the kids who are waiting for a job in their career. It just doesn't work. We need to encourage apprenticeship, actual job skills, not just education or indoctrination.
Eleni.
Thank you. So I think in terms of the social housing aspect in Scarborough North, it's much more than just a national housing strategy, which the Green Party does support, and it will actually support increased funding to these and not support the privatization of CMHC. But the main Green Party platform piece that's really crucial here is a guaranteed livable income. To a lot of people, it seems idealistic, but it's been done and it's proven that it works. Now, to say, we're going to support and we're going to provide more social housing for you is one piece of the puzzle. A lot of these things happen in isolation in terms of the policy decisions, and everything works in a system. For every action, there is a negative reaction. So to say that just a national housing strategy will solve the crisis facing many people who live in Scarborough is it's not logical. So I think it's a far more complex issue than just a national housing strategy. It's supporting, like he said, better education, more targeted job approaches, and a guaranteed livable income.
Okay, Rathika, I'm going to give you the final word on this one.
Sure, thank you. The NDP has actually brought forward the bill in Parliament to create a national housing strategy that was voted down, and we're committed to bringing the national housing strategy back in, because we do need to be investing in affordable housing and looking right at Scarborough North, and there are quite a few residents who, even today I was talking with people who just can't afford the housing that they're living in, and there are dwellings where there are multiple families living in one home just to be able to make ends meet. And it shouldn't be the case. If they choose to live as an extended family, that should be their choice, but we should be investing in affordable housing. And the CMHC funding, for example, as the mortgages run out, we suggested to the federal government, to the Conservative government, that they maintain the funding, maintain that budget line item, so that we could continue to invest that in affordable housing, whether that's repairs, whether that's maintenance, or investing in new units, so that it's not going to be a big change in the budget line item for the government, but to continue the funding for housing. And of course it was not supported. And going back to what both Raphael and Eleni mentioned here is the importance of a livable wage, making sure that Canadians are able to make a wage that's not poverty wages. Our minimum wages right now in Ontario, as of today still, it's $11. You make minimum wage working full-time, you're living in poverty. Mm-hmm. And that's just not fair. And that's why the NDP is proposing a federal minimum wage of $15 an hour, so that Canadians can be making a livable wage. And we know that it's a federal minimum wage affects workers in federally regulated workplaces, so that's banks, telecommunications, airports, and the such. And that means that at least those workers are going to be helped right away with the federal minimum wage, and then hoping that it is not hoping to really set the bar for the provinces and for Ontario to follow suit, so that workers are paid a livable wage.
Can I say something about minimum wage? Okay. I think it's something that I've had brought up to me before by concerned electors, and the minimum wage is yet again another buzzword, because the minimum wage means nothing when your purchasing power goes down with it. As the minimum wage increases, if your purchasing power goes down, it doesn't matter that they give you $20 per hour if it costs $5 per loaf of bread. We have to increase the standard of living, what your money can do. If we could actually cause that reverse shift of minimum wage to the purchasing power that it can accomplish, that would be optimal. How do you do that? Well, that's a different conversation. But to just discuss minimum wage, it's a Band-Aid solution to a real problem.
Okay, what I'd like to do is switch to foreign policy. We only have about 10 minutes left in this discussion. So let's talk about what everybody has been talking about, and local and municipal and federal governments have been discussing, is the refugee crisis that we've been seeing, and how many people this country, who has been known for so many years as the world's peacekeeper, how many people that we could reasonably bring into this country. The existing government is pledging 10,000 Syrian refugees by September 2016. Is that the right number? Is it enough? Should we do more? Should we do less? Rathika, I'll start with you.
Thank you. I remember over the last 2 years, we were asking the Conservatives how many Syrian refugees have been brought in, and we couldn't get a straight answer out of them. Recently, we learned that the government has now brought in just over 2,000. The United Nations had requested Canada to bring 5,000 over the last 2 years per year. And so we're in a huge deficit of what the United Nations has asked us to do. As global citizens, it is our responsibility. As a G7 nation, it is our duty to help the countries that are in strife and to help these asylum seekers and bring these refugees in. The NDP is committed to bringing the 10,000 that we should have brought in by now, by the end of this year, and then 9,000 every year for the next 4 years, which is what the United Nations had asked of Canada to do.
And Shaun?
Well, I have to say, first of all, that this is not an issue that should have been politicized, because Canada has a long-standing tradition, whether it's been a liberal government or a conservative government, of being a country that has always been compassionate. And in issues like this, where we do have a Syrian refugee crisis, the right thing to have done was to make sure that we are processing refugees, that we are accepting them, that we not only accept them, but we provide them with proper settlement. And also critical to what Canada can do is to work with the United Nations High Commission for Refugees to ensure that there's critical relief for those affected in the region. And that is what our party is committed to. It's to make sure that we restore our role as a humanitarian country on the world stage. And it very much reminds me of the difference in attitude that we're seeing with the current Conservative government towards refugees. That's not the approach that as Liberals we support. We're a party that supports making sure that we provide opportunities for new Canadians. And as you saw in the recent headlines, 30,000 less immigrants to Canada that was recently reported. So overall, we need a new change in attitude.
All right. Thank you. So actually the Green Party supports an influx of 25,000 refugees from this specific region. But having said that, actually I had a conversation with a constituent today, and she highlighted something to me that happened in Hungary with the recent crisis at the borders where migrants weren't allowed to cross through. There were Red Cross workers that were going to give food and water to these refugees, and they were turned away because they saw the crosses, and a lot of these individuals were against that religion and that support. So having said that we want to increase the influx of refugees, it needs to be done smart and systematically. Because while there are wonderful people who were uprooted from their homes and their lives that they never intended to be, there are a couple bad apples in there, and there might be. We can't just blanket let them all in. There needs to be a more systematic effort to determine what are their intentions, who are they going to be supported by, and at least monitoring it after it comes to pass instead of letting it go ad hoc. So I'm more realistic of the sense that it can't be done overnight. We can't just open the doors and let them all flood in, because that doesn't support our national security. We need to be realistic in this sense. So I think a more pragmatic and practical approach with the ultimate goal of increasing the influx is where we stand.
Raphael.
I have a personal view on the matter, because I used to help refugees, specifically people from Mexico and other Latin countries who were escaping violence in their countries, and I dealt with a lot of cases. I helped legal aid. There were people that I knew, my friends, and so I saw a lot of the intricate details of what it means to be a refugee, the hardships that they go through. But let me give you this other perspective. What is a refugee? It is someone who's leaving their home because of some reason that they would rather not have to have left their country, usually violence and usually persecution for different means. Now, let's say we accept these refugees, and I'm going to borrow from the three candidates here. Let's say we accept these refugees and we don't control it properly, and we find a family who's living in Toronto and they've been accepted, they're a refugee, they're going to be granted their citizenship, and they're walking downtown, and guess who they see on the street? The guy who was persecuting them, who was seeking to kill them, who killed the dad, the son, the whoever, and there they are. How did they get into Canada? Oh, because they were a refugee too, from the same region. Is that fair? That's not fair to the refugees who are escaping the violence. We need to have strict controls. We can't just say, yes, we'll let them all in, or no, only 10,000, or only 20. No, we have to think of this thing in a rational, serious way, where we consider the people we're bringing in as people with real problems who are dealing with real issues, and not just think of them as a political issue. I think it's very important to treat it seriously.
We only have this is an unfair question. Well, it's not unfair, but it has to be a really short answer from each of you. How do you view Canada's role as a peacekeeper. There has been much talk about how that's been tarnished in recent years, and we are no longer considered the peacekeepers of the world. Are you happy with our reputation abroad? Would you change it? And it has to be a very short answer. I'll start with you.
Me, great.
Yes.
We are failing. We used to be known as a force of peace and development in the global stage, and right now we are failing our international commitments with everything, whether it's with foreign aid, whether it's in. I've attended many conferences internationally on sexual health and reproductive rights for women and the developing countries, and they're all shocked and surprised that I'm there representing Canada, because they're not used to Canada actually caring anymore.
Shaun,
Our global
I have to cut you off, I'm sorry,
That's fine,
Shaun.
our global reputation has changed.
I absolutely agree. Our global reputation has changed. People don't have the same view of what Canada used to be. It was under successive Liberal governments where...
Is it a bad thing that we've evolved? Some would say we've evolved into, you know, a greater role internationally. Let me just throw that out at you.
Well, I think evolve in which direction, and I know that from speaking to people that they don't see Canada as the peacekeeping humanitarian nation that it once used to be perceived as. We've got to change that, because perception is very real for people, and we got to do that with smart policies and putting out Canada as a humanitarian country.
Okay, just 15 seconds each.
Easy. So I think the destruction of CETA into DFAT-D is a huge issue. I mean, the fact that we even took away the International Development Agency and made it the Department for Foreign Affairs and Trade and Development shows that our evolvement, this evolution
that's
has been
15.
to trade.
Sorry.
To keep it short, I'm a Christian, so I'll borrow from the Bible and the words of Jesus. Blessed are the peacekeepers.
All right. We are now going to move, this hour is going very quickly. We're going to move on to our closing statements. We are going to do them in the reverse order that we started in. So that means, Raphael, you get to begin.
So, as I mentioned before, I'm running because I'm fed up with party politics and nobody representing my voice. There's a lot of disillusionment. If you are disillusioned with the way things are running, with nobody representing your voice, please vote independent, vote for me, and I will represent your voice. As an independent, I don't have to vote along party lines or what some party leader dictates. I believe that life begins at conception. When a woman is pregnant, inside her is a living human being who deserves to live and who should be protected, and not at the expense of the mother's life. They should all be protected, and there's people doing these services.
Thank you. Eleni Macdonald now.
So I think the biggest component of me is, the biggest issue that I face is people aren't voting. The most important aspect is to get out there and get your vote heard. It doesn't matter who you vote for. I don't care if you vote for me or any of these other people, as long as you vote. That is the most important aspect. And vote for something that you believe in, not against something just because you're afraid of what could happen. I mean, look at all the amazing things that we're promising. These things can happen just with enough support to get the ball rolling.
Thank you very much. Shaun, Chen.
Thank you for watching. I have the incredible privilege of serving this community for the past 9 years. I've brought in incredible investment, built 2 new schools, made a reality the newcomer service at the Malvern Town Centre, and helped fight to keep the green space at Albert Campbell Collegiate. That's the type of representation I'm going to bring to the community. Local, responsible, dedicated, and responsive. We as Liberals have a plan. It's a plan to invest. It's very different than the NDP and the Conservative plan, which is to cut until there's a balanced budget. That's the wrong approach, and our approach is to build the economy and support our middle class.
Thank you. And Rathika Sitsabaiesan.
Thank you, Cynthia, and thank you for taking the time to join us here tonight. I want you to know that I am listening to voters, and when re-elected, that's exactly what I'll continue to do. Like Eleni mentioned earlier, she gave an idea for an ombudsperson. I took that, and now it's become part of NDP policy. That is the type of representative I am, where I listen to the young people and everybody in the community and make sure that their voice is heard. And only Tom Mulcair and the NDP have the leadership and the experience to get the job done. And I'm very excited to be part of the change that we need in our country. And for that, I need your support. With your support, we can defeat Stephen Harper and the Conservatives and repair the damage that is done in Scarborough North. And for that, I need your help. So on October 19th, vote Rathika Sitsabaiesan, your neighbor and NDP candidate.
And thank you all for being here this evening, and thank you for joining us on the local campaign. Airtimes for other debates can be found on RogersTV.com. I'm Cynthia Mulligan. Good night for now.